Welcome to Diplomacy and International Relations by Bastian Freiburg. Just a note before we begin. This deep dive is generated with AI, and all the information has been verified by Bastian Freiburg.
About to be diving in.
Today we're getting into something really central for anyone following Danish policy or international relations. It's the Danish Security and Intelligence Services, PET's, report on the espionage threat.
That's the assessment of the espionage threat to Denmark, the Faroe Islands, and Greenland. A key document.
Exactly. It's from before mid-April 2023, and its whole purpose is really to raise awareness about foreign intelligence operations targeting the Danish realm.
Which is crucial in today's climate.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack that. Who are the main actors? What are they after? And importantly, what does this mean for international politics, for Danish policy specifically, and for Denmark's overall role in the world?
Right. Where do we start? The report paints quite a picture.
It really does. The headline seems to be that these foreign intelligence activities are, and I quote, significant, multifaceted, and persistent. It's not a minor issue.
Not at all. It's presented as a constant pressure. And the report is quite specific about the main sources of this pressure, isn't it?
Yes, it points fingers quite clearly. Russia has been the primary concern for years, and Pete expects that to continue, at least in the immediate future.
But there's a caveat there, a potentially significant shift mentioned.
There is. The report suggests that, looking longer term, China's intelligence activities could actually emerge as the most serious threat. That's quite a statement.
It really is. And it reflects those broader shifts we see in international relations, the geopolitical currents. Russia's actions, particularly in Ukraine, obviously drive their immediate intelligence needs.
Makes sense.
But China's long-term strategy, their ambition to become a technological superpower, that fuels a different kind of intelligence drive, a very persistent one.
And it's not just those two, is it?
No, the report also mentions others: Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They conduct intelligence activities here, too, perhaps more sporadically, but still relevant. Most of these states are authoritarian, giving their intelligence services pretty extensive powers.
And the type of activity is broad, too. It's not just cloak and dagger spying anymore.
Far from it. Of course, there's classic espionage, trying to get hold of state secrets, but there's also a major focus on illegal procurement, trying to acquire technology and knowledge, especially for military purposes.
Stuff they can't develop or buy legal.
Exactly. Then there are influence activities trying to shape public opinion or even policy decisions here in Denmark. And, quite disturbingly, monitoring and harassing their own citizens living here, especially dissidents.
That last one is particularly chilling. The Ukraine war seems to have put everything on higher alert.
It definitely has. The report explicitly links Russia's invasion to heightened concerns across Europe about espionage, but also about potential sabotage of critical infrastructure.
And Denmark's role in NATO and the EU makes it a key target in that context.
Precisely. Its strategic location, its support for Ukraine, its alliances, all points of interest.
Russia's intelligence needs must have shot up since the invasion started.
Unquestionably. And even though Denmark expelled 15 suspected Russian intelligence officers back in April 2022, which certainly hampered their human intelligence capabilities here.
You mean they're spies on the ground?
Yes, they're officers operating under diplomatic cover. But the report anticipates they'll simply adapt. Their need for information hasn't gone away, it's likely increased. So we should expect them to lean more heavily on other methods.
Like cyber espionage? Or other covers?
Both, and more. We'll likely get into the specific methods later.
Okay. And shifting back to China, that long-term threat potential, you mentioned it's tied to their technological ambitions.
Yeah.
How does that play out in terms of intelligence gathering?
Well, think about it from a global politics perspective. Technological leadership is increasingly seen as fundamental to global power. China's stated goal, you see it in their 5-year plans, is self-reliance and dominance in key tech areas.
So countries like Denmark, which are strong in certain niches,
become prime targets. Denmark has expertise in areas like green tech, biotech, quantum computing, all things China is heavily investing in. They'll try to acquire this knowledge, sometimes illegally through partnerships, but the report warns, sometimes illegally.
And this civil-military fusion strategy complicates things further.
Hugely. It deliberately blurs the lines between civilian companies and research institutions and the Chinese military complex. So if you're a Danish company partnering with a Chinese firm,
you might not know the ultimate end user.
Exactly. You risk unintentionally transferring technology or knowledge that ends up supporting China's military or surveillance apparatus. It makes due diligence incredibly difficult.
And then there's that 2017 Chinese intelligence law. That sounds quite significant.
It really is. It essentially mandates that all Chinese citizens and organizations anywhere in the world must cooperate with China's intelligence services if requested and keep that cooperation secret.
Wow. That has massive implications for trust in international collaborations.
Absolutely. The report specifically flags the risk associated with using certain Chinese technologies, especially those that handle large amounts of data, because that law could compel the company to hand over that data.
Like communications tech, maybe?
Potentially, yes. And as Chinese technology becomes more integrated into critical infrastructures, think energy grids, telecoms, it could theoretically create leverage points for China down the line.
It's not just about state secrets or tech, though. The report stresses that individuals here are targeted too.
That's a really important dimension. Both Russia and China, and others like Iran and Turkey, actively monitor and sometimes harass or pressure their own nationals living in Denmark. This is often about silencing criticism or controlling opposition movements.
And events back in their home countries can directly impact the threat level here.
Yes, the report notes how domestic crackdowns or political shifts in places like Iran or Turkey can lead to increased intelligence activity targeting diaspora communities in Denmark.
And this threat picture isn't just for mainland Denmark, right? The Faroe Islands and Greenland are included. Why this specific focus there?
It's all about the growing strategic importance of the Arctic and the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
You have major powers, China, Russia, the U.S., all showing increased interest, both economically and militarily.
Resources, shipping routes, military positioning.
All of it. The location is key for monitoring ship and submarine movements. Greenland hosts the Peterfik Space Base, vital for U.S. missile defense. China is very interested in Greenland's potential mineral wealth.
So authorities and companies in the Faroes and Greenland become targets.
Yes, public authorities, decision makers, companies, research institutions, anyone with information relevant to political or military matters, critical infrastructure, potential resource exploitation, or significantly, potential Chinese investment projects.
Okay, so that sets the scene. Let's dig into the specific actors, starting with Russia. What are their main intelligence priorities regarding Denmark?
Well, the report details a consistent interest in Denmark's foreign and security policy, its defense policy, especially within NATO, its Arctic strategies, critical infrastructure, and generally anything deemed important to Russian interests.
And the war in Ukraine has intensified this.
Definitely. They're keen on understanding Denmark's stance on sanctions, the specifics of military aid to Ukraine, transport routes for that aid information that could potentially be used for countermeasures, maybe even sabotage, though the report is cautious on that last point regarding Danish territory itself.
What about technology?
Still a major focus, they're trying to acquire Danish tech, particularly high-tech items Russia can't produce itself, and also know-how in green energy. They're especially looking for dual-use products, things with both civilian and military applications that are subject to sanctions. Think advanced sensors, maritime tech, things like that.
And even if an item isn't strictly controlled, if it's cutting edge.
They might still try to acquire it if it could support their defense industry, especially now with sanctions biting.
So despite the expulsions of those diplomats, they're finding other ways.
That's the assessment. We should expect more use of intelligence officers under non-diplomatic cover, maybe posing as journalists, academics, business people. Also, attempts to recruit Danish sources while they're traveling in Russia or third countries.
And the digital domain.
A huge component. Increased reliance on electronic intelligence gathering and cyber espionage is almost certain. They need to compensate for the reduced human intelligence footprint here.
The report also mentions private companies and NGOs linked to Russia.
Yes, primarily in the context of influence operations, trying to sow discord, weaken NATO or EU unity, amplify narratives about the negative consequences of sanctions, or shift blame for the security situation, often using social media where attribution is hard.
We've seen examples of suspected Russian officers under deep cover elsewhere, right? Like the researcher in Norway.
Exactly. And the case of the officer posing as an intern at the International Criminal Court, it shows the sophistication and patience involved. Plus, the finding of Western tech in Russian weapons in Ukraine proves their procurement networks are still active, unfortunately.
Right. Let's pivot to China. Their goal is technological leadership. How does that translate into intelligence activity against Denmark?
It means a very proactive, often aggressive approach to acquiring knowledge and technology. International research collaborations, business partnerships, these are avenues they exploit. The risk, as PT sees it, is the illegal or unwanted transfer of sensitive know-how.
Especially with that civil-military fusion policy muddying the waters.
Precisely, it creates inherent uncertainty. Is this collaboration purely commercial, or will the technology end up with the People's Liberation Army? They also actively try to procure Danish products directly for weapons programs, sometimes acting as intermediaries for other sanctioned states like Russia or Iran.
Trying to hide the true end user again.
Yes, concealing the military application to get around export controls. Beyond tech, they're also interested in Denmark's foreign and security policy, Arctic positions, critical infrastructure, similar areas to Russia, but perhaps driven by slightly different strategic calculations.
And that 2017 intelligence law underpins a lot of this.
It's a cornerstone. It provides the legal justification within China for demanding cooperation from any Chinese citizen or company globally. This creates, as the report highlights, an inherent risk when using Chinese technology, especially if it handles sensitive data.
The TikTok example cited in the report comes to mind.
Yes, the recommendation for government employees not to install it on work devices stems directly from concerns about data collection potentially being accessed by Chinese intelligence under that law.
And China also focuses on its own citizens here.
Very much so. The report details extensive efforts to monitor and control Chinese nationals in Denmark, aiming to reinforce loyalty to the CCP and counter criticism. Embassies often maintain close links with Chinese community organizations for this purpose. There are even reports of students on state scholarships being pressured.
It's a multi-pronged approach. The influence agent example in the UK Parliament also shows they work through human networks, too.
Absolutely. Cultivating relationships to subtly steer policy or opinion. And we shouldn't forget their significant cyber espionage capabilities, targeting Danish authorities and companies for political, security, and economic intelligence.
Okay, briefly then, what about Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia? What are their main activities in Denmark, according to the report?
Iran's focus is largely on regime opponents living here, activists, journalists, critics. They engage in monitoring, harassment, and sometimes, as the report notes, with historical examples and a specific prevented plot in Denmark, more violent actions like attempted assassinations or abductions, sometimes using criminal networks. They also try to bypass sanctions to get tech for their weapons programs.
A serious threat for those targeted individuals.
Definitely. For Turkey, the main activity mentioned is intelligence gathering on individuals perceived as threats by the Turkish state, particularly those linked to the Gulen movement. There have been cases across Europe, including Denmark, related to this.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia.
Their activity seems linked to the regional rivalry with Iran. The report cites a case where individuals in Denmark were convicted for passing information about Iranian-linked people and organizations here to Saudi intelligence.
So, a complex web of actors. Who are the primary targets within Denmark for all this activity?
It's a broad spectrum. Government ministries, parliament, the civil service, especially people working on foreign policy, security, defense, energy, critical infrastructure. They want insights into Danish positions, negotiations, key players, especially in international forums like NATO, the EU, the UN.
And Denmark's own security and defense apparatus.
Naturally. PIT itself, the Danish Defense Intelligence Service, DDIS, the police, emergency services, and the armed forces, they're interested in capabilities, methods, sources, plans, and any intelligence shared by international partners.
Critical infrastructure seems like a recurring theme.
Absolutely crucial. Energy, transport, telecoms, health, finance, and not just the main operators, but also their suppliers and sub-suppliers who might have system access or knowledge. Espionage here could pave the way for sabotage. While Pete assesses physical sabotage on Danish soil as less likely currently, the risk remains, especially for infrastructure like undersea cables outside Danish territory.
What about the private sector and research?
Huge targets. Research institutions and tech companies working in cutting-edge fields, quantum, AI, biotech, energy, space, robotics, defense tech, are highly attractive for acquiring know-how and technology, including export-controlled items. Intelligence services will try to connect with students, researchers, employees.
And individuals remain vulnerable, too.
Yes. Danes working or studying abroad, especially in authoritarian states, can be targets for recruitment or harassment. And as we mentioned, refugees and dissidents in Denmark are actively monitored and pressured by their home country's intelligence services.
Even Denmark's bid for a UN Security Council seat is mentioned.
Yes. The report anticipates this will increase foreign intelligence interest in Danish diplomats, as intelligence officers are known to be systematically posted at the UN.
Let's look specifically at the Faroe Islands and Greenland again. What are the unique dynamics there?
The heightened geostrategic interest is key. Russia is focused on military activities, political issues like the continental shelf claims, Arctic Council dynamics, and currently, Faroes and Greenlandic positions on Russia's sanctions,
On China.
primarily driven by potential investments in trade, especially regarding Greenland's resources. But that whole of society approach means even commercial ventures could serve underlying strategic or intelligence goals. There's a risk that investments could be leveraged for unintended purposes.
Could this great power rivalry spill over into influence operations there?
The report suggests it might, targeting potential disagreements within the Danish realm or trying to shape opinions on military issues or sanctions. There was that example of a forged letter in 2019 trying to stir conflict between Denmark, the US, and Greenland.
But no systematic election interference found recently.
That's what PT and DDIs assessed for the recent elections. And while China's physical Arctic presence is still developing, they're actively building partnerships, offering expertise and finance, likely aiming to boost their regional access and ultimately their global standing.
Okay, we understand who's doing it and who they're targeting. How do they actually do it? What are the methods?
Well, the classic method is still very much alive. Human intelligence, or HUMINT, recruiting and running agents. Intelligence officers operate under various covers: diplomat, journalist, researcher, business person.
How do they find and recruit someone?
It's often a gradual process. They'll research potential targets using open sources, social media, publications looking for access, maybe vulnerabilities. Then they establish contact, assess the person, build rapport, maybe offer small gifts or favors. This leads to what they call a confidential contact. Eventually, they might make the direct pitch for cooperation.
What makes someone agree?
The report mentions the classic motivators: ASE, money, ideology, coercion, or ego. Financial gain, sympathy with the foreign power's cause, blackmail or threats, or simply feeling important and valued.
And beyond human spies.
Cyber espionage is huge. It's often harder to detect, can provide persistent access to data from afar, and carries less physical risk for the operatives. It can yield vast amounts of information and can also be used to prepare the ground for destructive cyber attacks later. Russia and China are particularly strong here.
Listening in on communications, too.
Absolutely. Intercepting telecommunications, phone calls, texts, emails, data traffic is a core capability. They're constantly developing new techniques. High-priority targets like politicians and senior officials are definitely subject to this.
The report also details illegal procurement quite extensively. How does a sanctioned piece of tech from Denmark end up, say, in a Russian weapon?
It's often a complex chain. They might use seemingly legitimate front companies or intermediaries to make the initial purchase. Then the goods are routed through multiple transit countries, often with falsified documents, to obscure the final destination. Places in the Caucasus, Middle East, or Asia are sometimes used as hubs.
So Danish logistics companies could be involved without knowing.
Yes, that's a risk. Intelligence services often facilitate these networks. Even research collaborations can be exploited if researchers aren't careful about dual-use potential or the true nature of their partners' affiliations.
What are Danish authorities doing about this?
PAT works closely with the National Police and the Business Authority to track these attempts, share intelligence on suspicious entities or rerouting schemes, and enforce export controls and sanctions under Danish and EU law.
Foreign direct investment is another area flagged for risk. How can investment be a security problem?
Generally, FDI is good for the economy. But if a foreign state-linked entity gains control over critical infrastructure like energy or telecoms, or acquires a company with sensitive technology, it can create vulnerabilities.
Access for espionage.
Or
Leverage.
both. It could provide physical access to locations, IT systems, or sensitive data. It might allow for political pressure or even sabotage later. Think about a foreign state-controlled company running part of the telecom network or having access to citizens' health data. It creates dependencies.
Is Denmark screening investments now?
Yes. Since 2021, there's a formal screening mechanism for certain foreign investments that could pose a threat to national security or public order. PE is involved in assessing those risks.
And finally, influence activities. How does that differ from espionage?
Espionage is about stealing information. Influence is about shaping it, planting narratives, or changing perceptions. It's often done openly through state media or diplomat social media, but can also involve clandestine influence agents who cooperate secretly with foreign intelligence services.
Is that illegal in Denmark?
It's only punishable if someone collaborates with a foreign intelligence service to push a particular agenda in the political debate. Just having sympathy for a foreign country isn't illegal, of course. The report even mentions academic research showing how diplomats sometimes use social media to project an image of harmony, potentially masking underlying conflicts.
Interesting. The report also touches briefly on prosecuting international crimes in Denmark.
Yes, it outlines Denmark's legal framework, the role of the Special International Crimes Office, SAS, jurisdiction issues, and some of the practical challenges investigators face when dealing with crimes committed abroad, gathering evidence, witness protection, cultural barriers. It's a complex area relevant when individuals involved in such crimes reside in Denmark.
Right, so bringing this all together, this PT assessment paints a picture of, well, persistent and evolving threats.
It certainly does. It highlights how Denmark, due to its location, alliances, technology, and open society, is a significant target for powerful states like Russia and China, as well as others. Their methods are sophisticated and adapt to technology and geopolitical shifts.
It really drives home the connection between international relations, global power struggles, and the direct security challenges faced right here in Denmark. It affects policy, infrastructure, research, even individuals.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act, engaging with the world while protecting national interests and security. The work of Pete and other authorities in countering these threats is clearly vital for maintaining Denmark's sovereignty and protecting its citizens.
For you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer understanding of the complex intelligence landscape Denmark navigates. It raises some big questions, doesn't it? About vigilance, about partnerships, about the nature of state power in the 21st century.
Definitely food for thought about the challenges facing open democracies today.
We really encourage you to reflect on these findings. Perhaps look up the PPT report summary if you want more detail. What does this all tell you about the current state of international politics?
It's a dynamic and often challenging environment.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the espionage threat against Denmark. Please follow Diplomacy and International Relations by Bastian Freiborg for more analyses like this.
And if you found this discussion valuable, a 5-star rating would be really appreciated. It helps us reach more people interested in these critical global issues.